What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with another Dragon Ball Super video with Set 9 just around the corner. People are getting excited about the new Cooler, Mill support, the new Red-Blue stuff, and the new Invoker skill. But what about the new Successor skill that goes along with it? A lot of people are kind of not giving it the credit it deserves, and just not seeing the full potential of this new skill. So in today's video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at it and see just how good the new Successor skill actually is. So first we're going to take a look at each of the new Successor cards, and obviously we're going to start with my personal favorite, Cell. So we've got the 6-drop Cell, Devourer of the Masses. For 1 green and 1 yellow energy, you can play him via the Successor skill. When you play him with Successor, you KO an opponent's battle card ignoring barrier, and they discard a card from their hand. So really goes along with the idea of the Cell support and the idea of green in general just being kind of hand control. And I like the flavor that also when he comes out, he KOs a battle card, just like the original second form of Cell did in the Cell chain from Union Force. And if he's removed from the battle area by a skill, you get to draw 3 cards, or KO'd. So you're going to draw 3 cards, so you're going to replace the cards that you played, that you kind of used to play him via Successor, and then himself. So for 2 energy, this card is pretty cheap to play, and then you can even power him up with the new Flash Bomber extra card, give him that extra 10,000, and crit for the turn, so 35 crit coming at you for 3 energy is not bad at all. Next up, of course, we have my personal favorite, Cell Unthinkable Perfection. This one has triple strike, so this, along with that Flash Bomber, is insanely powerful because it'd be 40,000 triple strike crit, and that's a lot of damage coming against your opponent that they are definitely not going to want to take. Successor for 4 is relatively cheap as well. And then, if your leader's an android, which of course it's going to be, when you play him, your opponent reveals their hand, you choose 3 battle cards in their hand, place them in the drop area, and then you choose one of your opponent's leader's skills and negate it for the duration of the turn. And now that we know we're getting those new Unison cards in Set 10, and that those are going to count as like a second leader card, this card can negate either your actual leader skill or that Unison Warrior. So really kind of, and we've been saying this for a long time, where it says choose up to 1 of your opponent's leader cards, and we're like, well, does that mean at some point they want to do teams, or at some point they want to do like 2 leaders? What the hell? Well, we finally got our answer, and honestly, being able to just negate a non-keyword skill is pretty powerful if they're going to have anything that could potentially stop you from just wrecking their face with these cards. Then we've got some new Super 17 support. We got Total Eclipse. He's a 6 cost, 20,000 power. Successor for 1 green and 1 yellow, so pretty cheap to play. He's got barrier, and if your leader card's an android, when he attacks or is placed in the drop area by a skill, you get to draw a card and then choose an opponent's card and switch it to rest mode. It's not terrible, but it doesn't really feel like it's getting you anywhere. I personally don't think it's worth the 2 energy. I would much rather use the 6-drop Cell, who's going to get you more for, you know, what you're paying for it, because you're still going to have to, we're just, for the lack of better terms, sacrifice 6 battle cards equals 6 to play him, and then, I mean, when you attack, you draw 1 card and you switch 1 card, but then after that, he's probably going to die. He's only 20,000 power. Now, if you wanted to, you could also get this card out via the old Super 17 chain, but playing this card versus the original 6-drop would just be pretty stupid in my personal opinion. So, it's an okay card, but I don't feel like this is a decent, I don't know. For Successor, I feel like there's just better options. The 9-drop Super 17, on the other hand, Hellstorm Unleashed, is infinitely better than that. He's got critical, Successor for 2 green and 1 yellow, so pretty cheap to play, only 1 more energy than the other one. Now, having battle cards energy cost of 9 on the board to sacrifice for him is kind of where you've got to figure out the best way to get those out there, and we'll go over that in a few moments. When you play him, you choose cards in your opponent's life and put them in the drop area until they're at 4. So if you don't touch them before you Successor this card out, say you just focus on getting cards on the board, you don't attack, say they've got barrier, or, you know, whatever you do to protect them, Successor out on your 3rd turn without having damaged them, and then bam, you're going to crit them for 4 life, And then on top of that, he has crit himself, so you can just start swinging. And when he attacks, you get to draw a card and choose 2 of your opponent's cards and switch them to rest mode. So, much, much better card than the other 17. Again, getting to 9 on the board is somewhat of a hassle, and I mean, that could be where you want to play the 6-cost Successor, but again, to me, I think there are just better options, and I think if you're going to play a 6-cost Successor to be able to use as fodder for this one, I think you'd be better off with the 6-cost Cell. Then we've got the new Android 13 Adamantine Avenger. He's a 7-cost, 30,000 double strike, just like his other incarnation from set 3. However, with Successor for 1 green and 1 yellow, he comes out really, really cheap. Now, before we get into his abilities, let's take into account that you can Successor him out for 2 energy, but you have to have battle cards equaling 7 on your board to tribute for him. Or you can go with the old 13, 14, and 15 support. There's a couple different 13s that absorb a 14 and 15, and then you can put this card on top of that stack. That might be a cheaper way to get this card out. Successor is nice and all, and it's cheap in theory, but then when you have to think about all the resources you have to get out into play before you can use Successor, you kind of have to weigh your odds there. His activate main says, once per turn, if your leader card's Android 13 and you choose 3 Android cards in your drop area, place them at the bottom of your deck, choose 1 of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, KO it, and then your opponent chooses 2 cards in their hand, places them in the drop area. Not a bad ability at all. His ability is not limited to having to have been played by Successor, so that's why I made it a point to mention the older 13, 14, 15 support. It does require that you play an Android 13 leader, though. Maybe we'll get a new Android 13 leader sometime in the future. As of right now, though, I think they added a little bit of support for the older 13 here and there. I'd have to go back and look, though, because I do not remember. Really, the only thing standing in his way is Barrier, because his ability does not get around Barrier, or if your opponent just doesn't have cards in rest mode, you can't KO anything, and then your opponent's not going to discard anything. So you're making them lose those cards. Double strike, though, if you attack with them, you're going to give them 2 cards back. But all in all, this is a pretty solid card, and I like the flexibility with whichever way you want to bring him out. It does suck that he has to be limited to the Android 13 leader, but I understand they want to give more support to that so that you actually have a reason to play it versus using like one of the Cell leaders with the Android 13 support. Then we've got one of my personal favorites, the Super Saiyan 2 Son Gohan Wounded Victor, 30,000 triple strike, Successor for 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 other, so that's relatively cheap. Again, you have to take into consideration the resources and how you're going to get them out to play him. His auto, once per turn, when he attacks, you choose a yellow Son Goku in your drop area and combo with it. And, of course, there is a yellow Son Goku that comes in the same starter deck that when you combo with it, it says starter rare, but it's actually an expert deck, so whatever. But when you combo with him, you get to switch him back to active mode. So that's another triple strike coming down at him. So 2 triple strikes with this card. Plus, if you're running the Gohan leader, you got 4 triple strikes because you can switch him back to active as well. So that's a lot of damage coming at your opponent, especially when you can combine Feat Kamehameha with the leader. You could actually do that one first, play this card, try and go in, and 12 damage coming at your opponent. That's a lot of damage, especially later on in the game too. So really solid card. I really, really like this one. Then we've got Geron Strength in Silence. He requires a tribute of 10 freaking energy cost. Then you have to Successor him for 5 energy, 2 green, 2 yellow, 1 other, but he does have Quad Strike. Now, you could play this in any deck. You could play him in any deck, but if you want to get his auto, you have to be running Universe 11 stuff. It doesn't even require a Universe 11 leader. You just have to have some Universe 11 cards either in your hand or in your battle area to put in the drop area to make it to where he isn't affected by skills until the start of your next main phase. So, while he can be played without Universe 11 support, obviously you're going to want to be able to give him that ability. Thankfully, he can still be counterplayed. So, once he's counterplayed, then even if you were to Crusher Ball him, they can choose that auto and then you can't do anything else to him. You literally have to run him over, but he's still going to be in rest mode because counterplay goes first. So that's going to be the easiest way to get around this card. Thankfully, he does not have anything like barrier or deflect, because that would be absolutely insane. The Topo Successor card isn't too bad either. He himself has barrier, Successor for 1 green, 1 yellow, and when you play him or he's placed in a drop area by a skill, you get to choose one of your opponent's cards, ignoring barrier, negate their skills, and then KO them. So it's not terrible. You're not really going to do much else with him. I mean, you could attack with him, but again, he's only single damage, and he doesn't do a whole lot else aside from when he's put in the drop area by a skill. So now, I believe Successor would count as a skill to trigger that, so if you had him out and then you're like, oh, well, I'll keep him here, he's a 6 cost, and I'll use him for my next Successor, but otherwise, he's not doing much else besides that. So he's not terrible, but he's not super great either. So now, the biggest goal with Successor is trying to figure out how to get all of your targets on the board to be able to use them for the ability. And so we thought about this for a while. We went through and did a lot of our own research, trying to figure out the best cards to support the Successor archetype, because obviously the easier it is to cheat out cards to be able to play them for your Successor targets, the easier it's going to be for you to play the deck in general. So we've compiled a list of cards that not only are easy to play to be able to use for Successor, but also support the actual archetype you're trying to play the deck with. So obviously, we all know that Successor can only use targets that are green, yellow, or green-yellow, but that does not mean that we cannot take advantage of a few Overrealm skills. While we can't use them directly to be able to fuel Successor as much as I wish we could, cards like Dimension Support Trunks can be used to bring out a target that can be used for that. And there are a few vanilla green-yellow cards that you can grab, such as Super Saiyan Son Goku, Super Saiyan Blue Son Goku, and Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta. These are obviously your best targets because they are both green or yellow, and then they all have 20,000 power. So what you could do is actually play the Trunks, pay the energy cost, bring out one of these, it gets critical, swing with it, combo the Trunks, it's 25 crit coming at your opponent, and then you can still use them to fuel Successors. So it gives you a little bit of an extra push with these cards, while also bringing out one of the targets for free. I mean, granted, you're still going to pay the 1 energy for the Trunk support, but 1 energy versus 2 to play a card is still something. It's still kind of a way to get around it, and the cheaper that you can get out as many targets as possible for Successor, the better off you're going to be. If you happen to be playing against someone that is playing a green or yellow deck, you could also use Time Ruler Toa, although this one is a bit of a stretch, and really it's situational at best, but you could take an opponent's battle card 2 or less and use it for your own Successor. Her ability doesn't cost anything to activate, it's just 4 cards from Overrealm, but again, it's really situational because your opponent has to be playing one of the colors you need, and she can only take a battle card 2 or less. There's not really any other good Overrealm cards that can support this, just because, again, you can't use Overrealm cards for Successor, and while there is another Toa that lets you take a 3 cost or more, it's a dark Overrealm, so you have to have that many black cards in your drop area, so it's not really going to be effective. So these were really the only 2 options as far as like extra Overrealm support, and I only really considered them just because Overrealm cards are kind of free to play in general. Now we're going to get into the good support for the Successor cards, especially if you're playing androids. If you're playing the Cell Successor cards, chances are you're going to have an Android 18 in play, so you can play Destined Krillin for free. You can also play the Krillin and 18 power couple. You can play them for 1 energy, and that's a 4 cost, so right there, there's extra cards that are not part of the Set 9 support that can easily fuel your Cell Successor plays. If you're playing with, say, like, the Android 18 leader, or even the Android 21, gross. You could also play Namekian Technique Piccolo, because he's a green card that you can play for free for no energy, just getting rid of a token card. And then cards like Surprise Attack Frieza and Speedy Chilai are both free to play when a card is KO'd. So, being able to play them for no energy, and not to mention that you could also just attack with the Frieza beforehand, get that 15 crit in, and I mean, right there, I see several cards that are free to play. You've got 2, the prize attack Frieza is 4, so him with any of those other 3 free-to-play cards is 6. Right there, that's enough for the 6-drop Successor Cell. And you can do crazy combinations with some of the other cards as well. The Destined Krillin can be played pretty much at any time with the Cell support. Even if you don't have the draft box power couple, if you can get it for cheap, then I would recommend it. If you can't, it's not really a big deal. But if you were to hit the 9, you can play Destined Krillin for free after playing the power couple for 1. That's 6 right there. And then if you just play one of the other 3-cost androids, there's a 17 that's a 3-cost you can play for free. And there's an 18, there's a Cell that you can play if you have a 17 in play. Like, there's so many options for this support that I feel like it's a lot better than people are giving it credit for. And that's because they're looking at it in kind of like the sandbox of set 9, instead of taking a look at all these other cards that we can run with it and going, yo, we can do this and this, get this out sooner, faster, and then just start beating face. Now, if you're not playing the Android support, then there are other options as well, especially for yellow. You got the father and son, Goku and Bardock from the draft box that can both play for free. And that right there is 6 energy that you could use for several of your successor cards. Unwavering Solidarity Tora is a free 2-cost to play as well. And the Gene, if you have the Bardock in play, can be free also. So you've got a lot of options for some free-to-play cards to add up to any of the successor cards that you'll get. And, of course, the more successor targets we get in the future, then the more these cards will be useful in playing, being able to play those successor cards. The yellow stuff is a little more generic, because obviously you're just putting stuff in rest mode, playing the stuff. Gene's the free blocker, Tora's free for rest mode stuff as well. So it doesn't really support any particular successor deck as of yet. If we get like some crazy Saiyan successor stuff, that'd be really cool. But right now, I feel like this stuff is a little bit weaker than the green stuff, but it's more generic. So while it won't entirely support the deck you're playing, it might be a little easier to actually play with the new successor stuff. So it's extra options. I know the draft box Goku and Bardock are not exactly cheap either, but again, if you have them, then it's definitely something you should consider when you're building the new successor stuff. Alright, well, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this video. I tried to make this one a little bit shorter than the last one we did on the cooler mill support. I think we did alright with it. We still hit all of the main points, and we went over all of the extra support that you could run in with the successor support. I don't really feel like I should have told you guys about all of that stuff, because a lot of that I know nobody has been talking about, and maybe it might be giving away my secrets if I decide to run any of this in any competitive events. But it is what it is, and I'd rather be the first one to call it out than be the first one to get to have some success with it. You guys can use my ideas all you want. I just want to be the one to say I did it first. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about Successor. Now that I've kind of shared some of these little secrets with you guys, do you think Successor could be better than people are giving it credit for? Or do you still think that the red cooler mill and that red blue invoker crap is still going to be what dominates the future up until set 10? Let me know what you think in those comments down below. And we're going to go ahead and get the frig out of here now. And we'll see you guys in the next video.